Hello, and welcome to healthyhouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support our show, please use our Amazon affiliate link below. So today we are talking about Creeping Charlie, commonly called Creeping Charlie. Botanically, this plant is Plectranthus australis, and it is called Swedish ivy also. It's a fast-growing evergreen perennial native to South Africa that does tremendously well in your indoor garden. Easy to propagate, easy to grow, will grow full and lush. You can put it up on top of a bookcase where it'll spill down. You can put it in a hanging basket. You can just put it in a basket on a table. Lovely plant. I absolutely adore this plant because of its ease of growth and how pretty the foliage is. Very green. It can also come in some variegated, but it can also get a little more on the limey side as well, and nice and shiny foliage. And if you look at the pattern of the leaf pattern, it's a very interesting leaf pattern. Show you close up here, so you can see that the it's even just looking at a leaf is very interesting. The way it's formed, it almost looks like it's not real. So Creeping Charlie, as mentioned, nickname. It has some other nicknames as well. Another fun one is Runaway Robin, Lizzie Run Up the Hedge, Gill Over the Ground, and Ground Ivy, which is kind of boring compared to the other names. So you can choose, take your pick, or you can name your plant whatever you want to name your plant. Maybe Sally on the Run, whatever you want to do, or just go with Creeping Charlie. Okay, so how to keep your plant, aka Creeping Charlie, aka Sally on the Run, healthy and happy for you in your indoor garden. So these plants like a low to medium lighting. I would err more on a little bit higher light and not so much on the low. So because when I say low to people, they tend to think that's a dark room, which is not going to work. So medium lighting in your home, and a lot of homes have at least some area with medium lighting. Eastern exposure window, perfect place for it, providing that there is no obstruction outside of the window, such as trees or other buildings that would block sunlight. But if it's unobstructed, perfect place for this plant. This plant absolutely adores an eastern exposure. Also, full spectrum lighting works wonderfully well for these plants. So full spectrum lighting simulates daylight. You can get full spectrum light bulbs for just about any fixture in just about any form. So you can easily get some full spectrum lighting into your indoor environment to keep these plants healthy and happy with shiny, pretty foliage. Watering. Okay, so you don't want to overwater this guy. When they do get overwatered, they are pretty susceptible to root rot. I have a series on root rot if you want to check that out. If you think maybe your Creeping Charlie or Runaway Sally has succumb to root rot, then do check that out. So generally what I do is I wait on the moisture meter. I wait for the plant to get into the 4, almost into the 3. So it's still moist. It's still somewhat moist. You don't want it to go bone dry, but you definitely don't want it to be still pretty soppy when you're watering it. So keep that in mind in terms of watering. Always water this guy with warm to tepid water. You want to water all your houseplants with warm to tepid water, and I have a whole video on how to do that and why it's important. In terms of how, if you're using tap water, you can use some hot and some cold mixed together, and you get warm on your tap and use that. If you're using something like reverse osmosis, distilled, you may have to let it warm up to room temperature, especially during the colder months. And even if that's not warm enough, I have on particularly plants that are particularly sensitive, I will heat the water up a little bit so that the plant gets a nice warm to tepid water. This is really important in the winter months when your water coming out of your tap, if you're in a cold climate, is like 30 degrees, 40 degrees. that will shock the plant. It can kill off roots. You'll get root dieback, then you can get root rot coming from that root dieback. So really important to keep in mind. Okay, so you're watering well, you've got enough lighting, you're giving your plant lots of pep talks. That's going to keep him nice and healthy. Then another thing you want to do is fertilize. They are not humongous fertilizer consumers. However, occasional fertilizing will really help this plant look really well. So about once a month, do a nice addition to the plant of a liquid or a granular organic fertilizer. And follow package directions. Don't over fertilize this guy. Always err on the side of caution with fertilizer. So if you're not sure, go with half of what the recommendation is for the fertilizer, rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to add extra so it'll grow faster, because that won't happen. What will happen is you're going to get root dieback and you're going to get salt buildup in the soil. So do a half strength. And make sure to use an organic fertilizer. Organic fertilizers are much more gentle on plants, and they also sustain the plant soil. I have a video on that as well, how you want to sustain the plant soil, because you are Mother or Father Nature, and the plant is depending on what you have put into that soil. The plant is not outside where it can go wherever it needs to. The roots can go wherever it needs to in the soil to get what it wants. It's got this little pot that you're providing the plant. So you want to make sure that what you are providing the plant is good nutrition, and organics are the best way to do that. I do have an organic granular fertilizer, and I will put the link down below for that as well. Okay, so you've got the fertilizer going on. You want to fertilize except for in the winter months. Let this plant give this plant a rest with fertilizing during the winter months. This plant will likely slow down growth, as a lot of plants do in the winter months, so don't be alarmed. Just as long as the plant still looks healthy, you're doing fine with it. Warm-ish area in your home, even though they actually can go down to growing in 50 degrees, but I have found that they tend to grow best if they're in 65 to 75 or 80 degrees, in that range. So if you need to, you may need to in the winter time, if you get cold winters, move it into a little warmer area, just providing that it does have that sufficient light, the right type of light that it needs. You can trim them back occasionally, especially if you want them to get a little fuller growth. Initially, when it's growing, let it flow over, and then you can pick it up and see where it's getting a little scraggly, and then you always want to prune back to prune a set of leaves off back to where the second set of leaves is. So you don't want to leave blank stems, because then the plant will have to slough that blank stem off before it can start growing again. There's hormones in the leaf nodes when you prune down to the second set of leaves. That gives you a good overview of growing these lovely plants indoors. And pests. Diseases, as I mentioned, susceptible to root rot, so be careful with that. In terms of pests, sometimes you'll see some mealybugs, so keep an eye out for them. Have videos on how to treat them as well. And that's about what I've seen for them. Occasionally scales, so keep an eye out for that. So whenever you're watering your plant, checking on your plant, check very carefully for any pests and diseases on the top of the leaf, on the bottom of the leaf, along the stem area in there. Just make sure you don't see anything funky going on. That is it for Creeping Charlie, aka Runaway Sally, Swedish Ivy, and how to keep it healthy and happy. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when we release new videos.